Hi guys and welcome back to Is It Worth It Reviews. Today I'm going to talk about Acoustic Invader Fulcrum preamp. That's a small manufacturer here in Serbia called Acoustic Invader, and you maybe remember my review of the standard preamp that I used to own for a year, something like that, and then I upgraded to this one, which is a flagship version called Fulcrum, and its price is 6,300 euros, quite a bit. I actually hesitated to make a video about it because it's difficult for me to assess worth of something that expensive, especially because it's difficult to find similarly priced preamp that I could loan and compare this one to. And if you follow my channel, you know that I lean heavily towards real-life comparisons in every review. But many of you kept asking what is that behind you in the videos with red knobs, because I have this one for a year now, maybe even a little bit longer than that. And I'll try my best and present this one to you, why I bought it, how does it sound, and I'll of course throw in a comparison with a standard version, which is much more affordable, and one appropriately priced preamp a little bit later. So to start with build and finish, everything is simply top-notch. This is a premium device with a premium price, unfortunately, but it looks the part and it feels the part. So this is a thick metal chassis, and it's very heavy. Because of that, I do not use my standard setup and this small table that I use to put devices on. This is too heavy for that. Front plate is made of really thick aluminum, and these knobs, input selector and volume knob, are also machined of solid aluminum pieces, and it just feels and looks really premium in real life. Regarding the color, I have to say that while I was looking images on the web, I thought that this is some tacky red, but in reality it's much more of a dark, bloody, scarlet red. It's really earthy and not flashy at all, and I like it much more in person than I do when I just watch images. And the finish is not fully black, it's some sort of really dark gray. Once again, it looks great in person, and the finish is anodized. So is the remote, which is once again machined out of a solid piece of aluminum. It's a heavy slab with angular industrial design, and I like its look and feel. It's very heavy and hefty. The only thing that I don't like, not visually, but in a practical sense, is how sharp the corners are. And when I have small kids over, I usually hide this because it feels like they could hurt themselves. Only dropping this on your foot could hurt your fingers or something like that. And that premium look and feel is not reserved only for the front panel and the remote and just looks. So if we take a look at the back of the unit, we'll see the same attention to details. Now, for example, these RCA sockets, both inputs and outputs, are WBT. Those are low mass, copper, gold-plated RCA connectors that we usually don't see on a mass-produced factory device. This is like aftermarket upgrade stuff, and WBT is basically one of the best, if not the best, manufacturer of these high quality low mass connectors. There are 5 different analog inputs. 3 of them have both RCA and XLR input connectors. The output is also done as a single-ended RCA and balanced XLR. There's also a tape-in, tape-out, so if anybody is using that these days. But as you can see, this is a fully analog preamp, just standalone preamp, no digital section or anything of that sort, just high-end, basically high-endish, I don't know. High-end is insane these days, But when I was younger, this would be considered a true high-end preamp. Now, talking to that attention to details, even the power inlet is from the iiGo brand. Once again, pins made out of pure copper, gold-plated after that. And when we go inside, that attention to details continues. Now, all the wiring is from Duelund, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, both in the power section and signal path. Then we have 3 separate power supplies. All of these are linear, 2 are for the left and right audio channel, and the third, smaller one, is for the rest of the device, so it doesn't influence the audio power supplies in any way. Aside from that, you can see other parts that are really important for the audio because they're in the audio path directly. One of them is the volume attenuation, which is not a traditional potentiometer, but it is a shunt attenuator, and it's sourced from TKD, which is a truly high quality Japanese shunt attenuator manufacturer, and those are really expensive. Once again, I never saw these in a commercial mass-produced product. Then you can see that output capacitors are also these big chunky blue things, and those are German-made Ricke aluminum foil capacitors, 4 of them, because this is a fully balanced preamp. And of course, the center of everything is still JFET, working in Class A mode. But all those fancy parts aside, how does this preamp actually sound? Well, I have to say that it shares a lot of sound signature with the standard preamp version. If you remember that review, I praised it for being highly revealing, really high resolution, very informative, but still bold and juicy sounding. And it had really wide, big sound stage that could easily go head to head with best tube preamps at that price like Freya Plus with great tubes. And all of those qualities are still present in this higher end Fulcrum preamp. So we are talking about huge soundstage, great dense tonality and dense tone timbre, and a rich inner tone texture with some sort of warmth and full bodiness that I do not encounter often with the devices that I had the chance to listen to. But what is the difference, you may ask? Well, the difference is that Fulcrum has even deeper, gruntier and more authoritative bass line. It extends more, it hits harder, and it's controlled better. It's just punchier, and it's probably the best bass line that I've ever heard on any preamp in my place or at any other place that I visited. But the good thing about it is that it's not just huge bloated bass line. It's really well controlled, really firm and thunderous. And I love that about this preamp. But above that, the resolution is also increased. Now, the standard version is already plenty revealing, but Fulcrum brings in even more tone texture and that density of details, because at this point we are not talking about clean edges and clearly outlined tones. You get that with both preamps. You get that with almost any modern preamp. But then when you zoom into the tone itself, how much of that realistic tone it has, how rich it sounds. If the tone is raspy and husky naturally, like all wind instruments, for example, trumpets, saxophones, or string instruments where you do not pluck them, but something like cello, for example, or violin, how rich and dense and texturally filled those tones sound that's actually better with Fulcrum than it is with a standard preamp. And standard preamp was already fantastic with that, but this is just better. Aside from that, I cannot notice significant difference in terms of soundstage width and depth. Both standard and this version are great with that. Just dynamics and how lively and snappy and engaging they sound, once again, both are similar with that. Except this one has more thunderous, more controlled bass line. And both have that full-bodied, warm kind of sound, very revealing at the same time, whereas Fulcrum is even more revealing. And I have to say that the difference is not huge. And especially it's not as big as the price difference is, because the standard version goes for 1,500 euros. And that's like a killer preamp at that price point. And it's a killer preamp at any price point. This one hits that law of diminishing returns hard. You pay significantly more, you do get better sound. I cannot argue with that, but it's not nearly as better as its pricier. It's just how it is in the whole industry, and I think it's a law that cannot be beaten by any brand. That said, thanks to a kind friend and his kind loan, I did have a chance to compare this preamp with price-appropriate tube preamp Ear Yoshino 868. And that one is a bit older, but it is highly praised and loved preamp. And his particular preamp, if I'm not mistaken, was working with Telefunken NOS tubes. Those are fine tubes. It's not the best you can put in that preamp, but they're no slouch. Those are some fine tubes. So I compared them directly, and I was really happy with how that Ear Yoshino preamp sounded with vocals. Everything was so full-bodied and fluid and almost liquid-like only tube preamps, amps and DACs can do, and I loved that. If I was listening only vocals, for example my favorite Norah Jones, Leonard Cohen, etc., I would enjoy listening to Ear more. But some other stuff, like electronic music, pop music, rock music, etc., that are a little bit livelier and also busier, I did prefer Fulcrum a bit more, because it had firmer grip on the bass, bass was more thunderous, and Ear A68 is not a slouch with bass line. It has truly good punchy, deep bass line, greatly controlled too, but Fulcrum is just ever so slightly more explosive, punchier and better controlled without actually sounding leaner at any moment. And in the mid-range, while it does not sound as full-bodied and as palpable as Ear, as I said, I enjoyed vocals more with that tube preamp. But on the other hand, Fulcrum presented airier soundstage, definitely bigger, more layered soundstage. So if there's a vocal, there's more empty space around it and more separation between the leading vocal or any leading instrument and anything else in the soundstage. That Ear preamp has great palpability and three-dimensionality of a leading tone, but that separation and airiness is not as good. Everything tends to be a little bit more in the center and just a bit more in between your speakers. It has great depth, as I said, great three-dimensional feeling, but in a narrower sound stage. Everything is a little bit closer together. Whereas Fulcrum spreads that sound stage further left and right, and it stretches that empty space between instruments more, and you do feel that you hear more of that empty air and just atmosphere around main tones. So, as I said, I did prefer listening to vocals over the ear preamp, but I did prefer any livelier or busier recording over Fulcrum. And there's also that analytical listener and a reviewer in me that preferred Fulcrum because it showed greater differences between different sources, different decks that I review. I guess that's not important for most end users, but it is for me. I do feel that it is slightly more transparent and pass-through compared to ear preamp that offers more of its own beautiful, but more of its own sound signature on top of the sources. And that slowly leads me to the conclusion. So Acoustic Invader Fulcrum has that great combination of like warm, cozy, almost vintage-like sound, thanks to its Class A JFET design and choice of components, premium components and everything, and great resolution, great detail retrieval that you would expect from a modern high-endish preamp. And I like it because of that. It has full bodiness, it has just the right amount of fat that's needed for the sound to be really full and enjoyable and lifelike. And let's face it, I think that a bit of fat improves everything. Take a steak, for example. Dry steak is not a good steak. Or women, as another example. Bony women are not as attractive as those that have curves in all the right places. Fulcrum preamp does have curves in all the right places, and it is muscly beneath that. It wields those musical curves with great speed and dynamics and precision and authority. So to my ears at least, it presents like a great combination of modern, informative, high-resolution sound and that full, as I said, slightly vintage-like, warm and full-bodied sound. Tube preamps, like mentioned here, will give you even more palpability and fluidity, even fuller vocals and main tones, but they will sacrifice a little bit of information, speed, and transient response in the process. So as you can see, I really do like this preamp. And instead of giving my conclusion, is it worth it or not, because it's really truly difficult for me to answer if something that is just one piece in a hobby that is in no way essential for our lives, costing 6,300 euros, is it worth that price? I don't know. For me, it's difficult to assess any worth like that. I personally do not use such expensive gear. I actually had a great deal with this one, and I took it for a test only, and I listened to it. I really loved it, but even with that great price deal, it was still quite expensive for me. And I was on a verge, should I take the deal or maybe not? And my better half, my girlfriend, she was sitting next to me and she was like very stern. Why are you pretending? You know you want it, and the deal is great, and you will be sorry if you pass on it. Who knows how long would it take for the next time that you can buy something this high-end and this good-looking with such a premium feel and premium components inside that she knows I love. For me, that's like a candy store when I look inside of this preamp. So she was adamant that I should buy this preamp. And who am I to argue with what my woman wants? But I have to be honest here. If I could turn back the time and make that decision again, I would do the exactly same thing. If you're a gamer, you probably know that meme. I don't often replay RPG games, but when I do, I make the exact same decisions. if you're in a place, in a position where you can even think about a preamp that's this pricey, first of all, you're a lucky person. Man, you're living in a great time and a great place. So both time domain and spatial domain clicked together so you can enjoy a life non-essential hobby in a way that you are thinking about these extremely pricey products. But second of all, if you are in that lucky place that you can spend this much on a preamp and you're contemplating it, I think that this is probably one of the finest preamps that money can buy. You just take a look of the images of the insides of preamps of famous brands of that same price, like Name, Hegel, etc., etc. Take a look what sort of capacitors, wiring, potentiometers, etc. they're using, RCA sockets, power inlets, and then take a look again at the images of the insides of this preamp. This is like aftermarket tuning. It's an insane product, and there's nothing rational about it. I loved it from the first moment I saw it. I loved it from the first moment I started listening to it. And I just thought to myself, hell, if you're doing this, if you're reviewing stuff, you should have such a great preamp. It's a great reviewing and working tool. Okay, I'm just lying to myself and you. Now, I did not buy it because I'm reviewing stuff. I simply wanted it. It's irrational, but I just wanted it. It's so good. Look at these knobs. So that would be it. This has been my preamp in my main setup for a year now, and I believe it will be here for a long, long time. I am expecting that we grow old together. And yeah, one last thing. If you go to acousticinvader.com, unfortunately, you cannot see this whole range of flagship products. There is a flagship DAC called Lancer with the same look and feel. But for some reason, the website is not updated. It might be because the Goran that's behind the Acoustic Invader brand is actually working aside from producing these. He's a pilot. And when I hear about that, and when I see how good products he's making after his main job, I feel like a loser myself. But it is what it is. And by the way, he is a pilot. And do these knobs remind you on something? But that's it. I hope that he will update the website soon and show off these new higher tier products that he's making now, because I think they deserve it. That would be all for today, guys. See you next time. Bye.